Hello and welcome to another episode of Crizzy Books. I'm Crizzy or Criz, but only my homeboys call me Criz. At long last, 2024, the year of our Lord, is coming to a close. And as I begin to think about my favorite books that I read this year and all of the lists that I'm going to be making, I figured that I would start off with the things that I thought were the worst. So the list that's about to follow is going to be everything that I did not finish, DNF'd, or books that I just thought weren't very good. Now to preface this, this isn't going to be a long list. I had a really great year. I read a ton of stuff that I actually really enjoyed. I read some new all-time favorites. Just a lot of, in general, bangers all around. But let's not waste any time. Let's get into this. Starting with the things that I DNF'd. First on the list, we have Monsters by Barry Windsor Smith. This is a graphic novel that was written and illustrated by Windsor Smith. If you don't know, Barry Windsor Smith is probably most famous for his work on Weapon X. At least that's what I know him for. This graphic novel was 35 years in the making. He wrote and illustrated the entire thing himself, and it was completed. And what it essentially is about, without getting into any spoilers, also I didn't finish it, so I don't really know how this ends, but it seemed like the story of a Incredible Hulk almost, where the government has this guy who's kind of adult that they then turn into a superhuman being. It was just so slow. I just could not get into it. It was spending so much time on things that I felt like weren't very important, and even if they were, it took so long that I completely lost interest. I made it about a third of the way through before I finally closed it and just said, screw it, I'm done. I can't do it. And then felt really validated when I got online and people were saying the same thing, that it just felt like a chore to read it. So, unfortunately, while the artwork is great, the cover on this is amazing, I just felt like, bit of a stinker. Not for me. Up next, we have the sci-fi novel Vagabonds by Hao Jingfang. I had heard really good things about this. I love sci-fi, so I started up. It's pretty long. I think it was around like 600 pages, maybe more. I'm not sure. So that was daunting when I first cracked it open. I stuck with it for a long time, probably 60 to 80 pages, and by that mark, I was so bored out of my mind and just wondering where this thing was going that I was ready to give up. So I did what I always do. I got online to see if maybe this thing's going to pick up. Maybe at a certain point this gets really good. And it turns out it doesn't. It pretty much stays exactly the same throughout the entire thing. So I said, no, I'm out. I'm not going to sit here and read 600 plus pages of boring things like this. So unfortunately, that one was gone. And then the last on the list, and this one kind of sucks because I've heard so much good stuff about it. People rant and rave. I think they're making a movie out of the damn thing. But we have The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Like Vagabonds, I think I made it 60, 80 pages. That's pretty much my mark of if I can't get into it by now, I might dip. And I was so confused and uninterested. I could not get into this at all. I wasn't connecting with what was happening with the story. Yeah, really unfortunate because obviously this one has a lot of like high praise. But for me, it just was not hitting at all. Maybe one day I'll try it again, but it also sucks because I know that Colson Whitehead has, people really seem to like his books. And I had other ones on my list that now I'm kind of hesitant. I'm like, are they all like this? I don't know. So I'm a little kind of nervous going forward and reading other things of his. So those are the only things that I DNF'd this year. Not a lot. I don't really generally like to give up on things. Even if it's bad, I'll usually sit through it unless it's something that's like really long. And like with the ones that I have on here, like I give it enough time. And if it doesn't hold my attention, or if it's not grabbing me, I'll probably bounce. But now we're going to get to the things that I actually did finish. I just thought sucked. Here, you want to be in this?
Where do you want to be in this?
What do you got to say? Oh, okay. First on the list, we have Mind Freak by Chris Angel. So to preface, I read this because I think Chris Angel is very funny, unintentionally. And I love things like that. It's a guilty pleasure of mine is whether it's a movie or a show or just a person in general, people put in an effort on something, or they take themselves really seriously, but it's so funny. Like, why, how can Chris Angel look in the mirror every day or rewatch his show and think that he doesn't look like a complete goofball? And I applaud him for that. I love him for that. Maybe it's just a certain lack of self-awareness that I just really love. But I knew that I just had to read his book because there's no way that it's not going to be great, right? And great in terms of like hilarious. And this isn't to say that it's not. There's plenty of times in this where I laughed out loud at the things that he was saying because of how ridiculous and stupid they are. But overall, it was just really kind of boring, and he doesn't really dive too much into things. Like, I found myself being legitimately interested in his life and what it must be like to become a successful magician. Like, how does that work? It's so niche, and he just barely scratches the surface on those things. And yeah, it has some laughs, but overall it just kind of was boring. He rushes through all the important stuff and spends way too much time on the stuff that really doesn't matter, and those parts aren't that funny either. So yeah, overall I think I gave this a 2 out of 5. It's not very good. I mean, there's a couple chuckles in there. Luckily it's not very long, so that was good. Up next, I was kind of surprised by this, but also not at all. We have Upgrade by Blake Crouch. I read Dark Matter earlier in the year. I found Dark Matter to be good, but also dumb, and a lot of like convenient things happening within the plot, but because of what the plot was, I could forgive those things. This one does the same thing, but I can't forgive it. It's just stupid, which is totally fine. This is an action-packed science fiction thriller, but I just found it to be, again, very convenient. If you're looking for a fun science fiction action romp where the main character becomes so incredibly smart and upgraded to where he's pretty much invincible. He's smarter than everybody. He's stronger. He's quicker. He's everything. And he also kind of becomes James Bond towards the end of it. Yeah, check this out. Otherwise, avoid it. Next up on this list, this one was also pretty disappointing because this is a classic, one I was looking forward to reading, one that's held in very high regard, and it mostly just bored me to tears. This is Huck Finn, Mark Twain. This book ended up being a lot longer than I expected it to be, which sucked. It also spends a lot of its time wasting your time. Everything in this book took forever to get through. And that's not to say that what's happening in it isn't entertaining or fun or memorable, because it is. It just takes way too long to get to the point. I found myself so many times throughout just rolling my eyes, wondering when we were going to wrap it up. Yeah, this book is way too long for its own good, and I think that's where it suffers. If it could be edited down, I think this could have been 4 to 5 stars for me, but unfortunately, it's just not. And last on the list, this book is on here because it is disgusting. This is the most disgusting book I've ever read. It's Cows by Matthew Stokoe. This book is just really gross, like vile on every level. I've never read something so disgusting in my life, and it never really stops being that. But that's not to say that it's a bad book, because it's not. It had my attention the entire time. It just is so full of nastiness that it dragged it down. The story is actually very interesting, and I think that, you know, the undertones that it has are, they gripped me. I was never bored throughout any of this. I just wanted to throw up most of the time. Yeah, just a really, really gross, disgusting book. If you're into that, go ahead and check it out. I can't say I could ever recommend this to anyone to read. Yuck. So there you have it. Those are the things that I either couldn't finish or finished and didn't really like this year. Anything that you read this year that you either didn't finish or thought was just complete garbage, let me know in the comments. Look forward to more lists coming in the future. You're going to see some of my best. I'll go by genre, things like that. So more to come here very soon. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and as always, thank you for watching. Bye.